The man told the hero that the boy turned 15 today. The hero nodded in confirmation and congratulated him on growing up. The hero thanked him and wanted to add that something new awaited him ahead. But the man next to him, Otto von Edvarel, Marquis of the Borderlands, interrupted him. He asked with interest what the man was talking about, and at the same time took the bottle from the guard. He declared that the hero would die today, and ordered him to drink poison. This hero's name was Ron von Edvarel. He was only 15. In the darkness of the dungeon, someone was walking closer and closer. The guard greeted Mr. Felix kindly. The latter asked how the hero was feeling. The guard replied that everything was happening according to Mr. Lear's orders. The man said that his younger brother, Mr. Ron von Edvarel, was poisoned and died. The young man kicked the hero in the face with all his strength and shouted at the guards, "Don't you dare call him Lord. This scumbag doesn't belong in Edvar's family." An hour ago, Marquis Edvarel's estate, Yugdian Kingdom, Il Region, Mariella County. A dark basement with an iron cage in the middle. The hero looked at the jug and said that this was probably where his life would end. This annoyed him, because he was only 15 and had never even gone on a date. The hero poured wine into the cup, and then imperceptibly added poison to it. He repeated the order again. "Drink this and die." He could not understand how everything had turned out this way. But deep down, he understood that his fate had been decided from the moment he was born. In this country, only two things matter to a noble person: origin and magical talent. His mother was a servant and concubine of the Marquis Eduardo, and although he was born into a noble family, as an illegitimate son, he was unwanted from childhood. He has an older brother and sister, children of a legitimate wife who inherited pure blood. In addition, they were both born with a magical gift. Blood and magic. Everything that a true aristocrat needs, they had in full. And the young Mr. Felix was born with a special feature. He possessed water magic. But the hero found himself in a completely different situation. He turned to the inspector of magical matters and asked about the relevant law. In response, he was explained that this is a way to determine magical abilities, and this is exactly the test he is now supposed to undergo. He said that there are two ways to determine magical talent. The first is through a divine sign. If a person has an extraordinary predisposition to one of the four elements, fire, wind, water, or earth, a special sign appears on their body, confirming this. But the hero never had this sign. Then the inspector explained. The magic sign appears only in the chosen ones, so there is nothing surprising. For people like him, there is another way of checking. For the majority. Although here, most likely the result is predictable, so it is just a formality. He advised the hero to first raise his hand to the flame of a candle. If you don't feel the heat, then you have a talent for fire magic. The hero listened carefully and did just that. The hero screamed because it became unbearably hot, and the man reassured him. The fire element does not suit him. He explained that this is how they check compatibility with the four elements. Such is the law here. Now you need to pass the test with 3 more elements. Finally, he informed Ron that he had no inclination towards any of the 4 elements. The man was pushed and fell heavily to the floor. The young gentleman called Ron worthless and declared that he did not belong to the Edward family at all. As he left, he threw himself into the pursuit, so that the hero would not even think of sitting at the same table with them. The family had dinner calmly, discussing what a disgrace it was for the Marquis's house not to know how to cast spells. And besides, a bastard from a concubine always walks around dirty. The woman admitted that she feels sick even when she eats with the hero in the same room. He was born an unwanted child. He had no place in this world. He was strictly forbidden to leave the house, and no one was informed about his birth. This is a person who doesn't seem to exist. Yet he was not destroyed. He was left alive, and he believed it was thanks to his father's kindness. As long as the head of the family showed mercy, the boy waited with hope that one day he would be accepted as one of his own. For 15 years, hope has supported him. He has endured again and again despite the scorn, hatred, and disgust. Ron's answer was poison in the glass. He stared intently into the liquid. He remembered how ruthless his father had been. As Marquis of the Borderlands, he had no right to kill a relative, even if he was an illegitimate son. It would have been considered a disgrace. His father simply wanted him to renounce this life when he came of age. He had been kept here like cattle for 15 years, just for the sake of his family's pride and honor. The hero could not hold back his tears as he thought about it. He cursed angrily, gripping the cup tightly with trembling hands. The boy raised his cup and took a sip. After drinking every drop, he sat down at the table and waited patiently. He looked at his hands, not understanding why nothing was happening. Suddenly he laughed and said that it wasn't poison at all. Suddenly, a piercing pain shot through his entire body, and he fell, knocking the bottles off the table with his hand. He was gasping for breath, his eyes wide with pain, staring at the floor. He was burning hot. He was scratching himself madly, screaming loudly that he was terribly hot. His back was simply burning, and he himself did not understand at all what was happening to him. The hero turned to the side and suddenly saw something strange in the mirror. Looking back at his shining back, he suddenly heard a voice. He was told that he had mastered the magic of poison, and the neutralization would begin soon. The voice announced that the neutralization was complete, and now the hero could use the weakening poison. He did not understand at all what was happening, and remembered the moment when his brother Felix received the magic mark. The hero wondered, is this really what he is thinking? Without hesitation, he took off his clothes. In the mirror on his back, he noticed a bright mark in the shape of a dragon. Not believing his own eyes, he immediately realized it was a magical sign. He couldn't understand why this had appeared on his body and what kind of poisonous sorcery it was. He remembered the man's words. The first step to mastering magic was to feel it with your touch. However, the current law does not allow the discovery of magical abilities outside the four elements. The hero realized that these were all pneumatic systems, which is why he had never guessed about his abilities before. He would never have learned about his immunity to poison if he hadn't accidentally drunk it. He laughed and said that his father had decided that poison was better than fire or a bullet. He sincerely thanked his father for this choice. After all, his life was not over yet. There was another problem. The hero did not understand how to get out of here. Time was running out. He did not know when the guards would come to check if he was alive. Even if he managed to deal with them, the estate was still swarming with patrols. The hero quickly realized that if he was discovered, Edvar's entire family would come after him to destroy him. After all, every member of Edvar's family is a true genius of magic. He knew very well that if he fought, he would be killed instantly. Even with poison magic, he could only slowly weaken the enemy, but he definitely wouldn't be able to deal with them directly. The hero almost gave up, realizing that all efforts were in vain and he saw no way out of the trap. Constantly repeating the mantra of escape to himself and feeling the bitterness of powerlessness, he finally realized what kind of way out he needed. He decided that if he couldn't escape secretly, he would simply leave the estate openly. He wasn't sure if that would help, but he had no other choice. The hero was currently lying motionless on the floor. He stamped on his face with his boot and said he thought he would pretend to drink poison and try to escape, but as it turned out, he had completely misunderstood his intentions. He declared that the shameful impure blood that had disgraced the house of Edvarl had finally disappeared. This was said by Felix von Edvarl, the head of the Marquis of Edvarl. He stares silently at Ron's body, as if expecting something unusual to happen. He clicked his tongue and muttered that for a man who had died in agony, the hero's face looked too calm. It irritated him. Besides, he began to suspect whether the hero was really dead or just pretending. Felix used water magic along with the blade pistol spell, and the hero's body was cut into pieces in an instant. The magic had completely enveloped his body, and blood was still dripping from Ron's motionless body. Felix continued to watch and noticed that nothing was changing. It seemed that the man was really dead. Finally, having calmed down, he ordered his body to be taken, along with his mother's ashes, to the communal cemetery and simply thrown away. The soldiers silently carried out this order. The soldiers lifted Ron from the floor, blood dripping down his arm. Felix stopped them, noticing the dirt covering the floor, and said that they couldn't let a bloody body dirty the whole house. With a displeased click of his tongue, he added that, as disgusting as it was, he would have to treat the unfortunate man. While the soldiers held him, Felix gradually recovered. The hero's bloody hands suddenly became clean. Even the smallest scars disappeared. After that, Felix ordered him to be dragged away. He closed his eyes and said it was time to get back to work. After all, being the next head of the family wasn't easy at all. Eventually, the soldiers reached the cemetery and threw the bag on the ground. One of them grumbled that the path from the parking lot to the cemetery was not a good one. They decided to leave the bag there for now. Someone else remarked that he didn't expect anyone to come to say goodbye, but those were the rules. They decided to come back in 3 or 4 days to bury him, but to stay away today because it was already dark and scary. One of them reminded them that Felix had promised a reward so they could go and have a drink. The other just nodded in response. As soon as the guards left, the hero carefully cut open the bag and peered carefully into the crack. He saw a dark cemetery. After getting out of the bag, he said with relief that he was saved. The hero looked at his hand and, remembering his decision, began to cast a spell. Then the hero decided, since he couldn't escape, he would have to leave the estate in the open. He deliberately took the debilitating poison and started its action. The hero wasn't sure how well it would work, but he managed to bring himself to a state similar to real death. The hero, as he had planned, escaped from the estate, and a joyful surprise was that his mother was able to escape with him. Having made a cross for his mother, the hero sat down to pray, rejoicing that he had managed to get out of the estate alive. But what to do now? He understood. In order to survive further, he needed to figure out how the magic of poison works. Therefore, it is dangerous to stay here. If they find out that he is alive, he will not be spared. First, he must get out of the realm of Lyra, where Khajiit rules. If he can reach the coastal lands of Eustasia, he can sail even further. The hero was sure he would survive. He said goodbye to his mother and firmly decided to move south. The choice had already been made. He must master the art of poisonous magic without anyone finding out about it in the Marquis's house, and set off for ecstasy. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a maid with a knife in her hand addresses Marie von Astasia, predicting her death, and brandishes the knife. The girl screamed, begging him to stop. The hero looked carefully at the paralyzing mushroom and wondered, if you eat it, will you die immediately? As soon as the system reported that the poison in his body was neutralized, he immediately fell dead. As the hero had hoped, as soon as the poison entered his body, he heard a heavenly voice. A notification sounded. It turned out that when the poison in the body is neutralized, the system analyzes it and opens up the opportunity to use the poison's magic. Now the hero only had to wait until the neutralization was complete. A giant monster approached the hero from the forest, fiercely baring its sharp fangs. The hero was in a panic. His body was still paralyzed. He couldn't move a finger. He reproached himself for being careless and realized that he should have taken better care of his own protection. The neutralization process continued, but it seemed unbearably slow, and the hero begged for it to end faster. But the monster had already opened its mouth, and then the hero realized there was very little time left. However, before the terrible monster could strike him with its sharp fangs and claws, it fell dead right next to him. The monster died, lying with its mouth open next to a poisonous mushroom. Suddenly, another monster emerged from the shadows and began to mock the poisoned creature's body. The hero lay nearby and silently watched this eerie scene. He was seized with fear when a snake covered in blood appeared before him. The right head secreted a deadly poison that paralyzed the victim, and the left immediately began to suck the blood from it. Finally, the neutralization was complete, and the paralyzing poison began to take effect again. The hero instantly jumped to his feet and stepped back. The hero thought about the same poison that could kill Vandy Wolf. Looking into the future, he understood that he would definitely need a deadly substance. The decision was made. He had to get this poison, but he couldn't risk being bitten before the poison paralyzed the enemy. If the snakes got to him first, they would suck out all the life, and then he would die. He wondered if the paralyzing venom he had recently mastered would be able to immobilize the snake if he could quickly extract the venom and hide in a safe place. The hero stood on this very edge and realized there was no point in retreating. It was time to act. He rushed headlong into battle, armed with a paralyzing poison. Some time passed. The capital of the Duchy of Eustasia, Kranoff. The girl behind the counter explained that registering an adventurer costs 1 silver coin. The young man handed her the money, and she politely asked to see his nameplate. After looking, she asked again if his name had really been defamed. When the girl was convinced of everything, she returned the tablet to him. Looking at it, the guy thought that he would like to change his name so as not to give himself away. But since his name is associated with a spiritual tablet in the temple, simply taking a pseudonym will not work. He was inspired by the fact that only his name was listed. No one would guess that he was from the Ed Warhol family. In this world, the name Round is not uncommon. The girl asked what class he wanted to become, and he replied that he would become a ranger, specializing in the ability to work with various poisons. The girl was surprised, because this didn't happen often. He wondered if it was really so, but mentally decided not to admit that he was a poison mage. That would be too suspicious. The girl said that now was the perfect time to make money, as the prices of poisonous herbs and antidotes had skyrocketed. They would pay especially generously for antidotes that were not available in the duchy. The guy was surprised and asked why, but the girl didn't explain anything. She just quietly added that it was a completely different story. The guy immediately understood. She didn't want to talk about it. She wished Ron great achievements in his adventures, and as he set off, he thought that too much fame might later turn into a problem for him. But he understood well, if someone from Ed Warhol's house suddenly appeared before him on the battlefield, he would need a poison that could provide a worthy rebuff. So for now, he decided to quietly collect various poisons. 2 men were talking, and one of them said that the Dutch woman was a real find. She brought poisons, got money. It was as simple as that. Now the main character understood why the girl at the reception was hesitant. It was somehow connected with that Dutch woman. The hero stopped the adventurer to find out more. The man asked how he could help, and the hero, showing the coin, asked if he could tell him more about poisons. In another place, the man loudly called the next one. There stood a soldier of the Duchy of Estacia named Land, and an apprentice of the Duke's personal physician, Fall. Land immediately warned that this one had already been taken, so let him come later. And Fall added that they had simply slipped him an ordinary sleeping pill, trying to deceive him. Land indignantly noted that there were only crooks around. Knight Key approached him, informing him that only one person remained. Land ordered him to be let in. He noted with irritation that they had examined over 100 people, and not one turned out to be worthy, so they would probably have to look for healers elsewhere. Fall replied that there were no real healers in their lands who could help. Knight replied that they needed someone even more famous. The doctor reassured them, saying that they were already looking for such a person, but it would take at least a month for her to arrive from other countries. Knight wondered if the princess would have enough strength to last that long. He learned that the latter, a certain Ronde, a poison master, had recently appeared in this city as a new adventurer and was said to be well versed in poisons. Fall only shrugged his shoulders in response. Don't expect anything special. This one will definitely bring some tincture of aspirin herb. Ron approaches them to say hello. Land ordered him to stop chatting and asked directly, "How can you help?" Here was a chance to become a hero. From a traveler he heard that the Duke's daughter had been poisoned, and the girl's condition was only getting worse. The Duke was desperately looking for some saving medicine or magic item that could restore his daughter to health. The hero thought, while fleeing from the Edvarl family, it would be best to hide under someone's reliable care. If he manages to cure his daughter, perhaps Duke Anastasia will become his ally. However, the hero understood well that he should act with the utmost caution. A question arose at the hero's city. The information he could reveal was incredibly dangerous. It was like poison, capable of destroying him if it fell into the wrong ears. But if he managed to heal the Duke's daughter, he would receive the support and protection of the entire Duke's family. Land decided that the hero just wanted to lower the price, but in fact he turned out to be a swindler. In response, he said that he could not guarantee anything, but the love of parents for their children was always the same. These words were enough for the hero. He asked to find a person on whom he could test the poison. A man writhed in pain on the ground. Land couldn't understand what had happened. He had only just recovered. Fall claimed he had seen the hero do something, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Land looked at the dying man, then turned to Ron to ask what his real purpose was. He couldn't figure out what Ron was up to, but if he had come to sell the poison, he was ready to buy it. But Ron had only repeated that he had wanted only one thing from the start: a guarantee of safety in exchange for the antidote for the Duke's daughter. The knight firmly replied that it was impossible. After such a cunning deception, he would not allow him to even come close to the princess. Then the stranger said that he could prove his ability to cure her. However, if they saw it with their own eyes, they would themselves become accomplices. He asked if they were ready for this. The knight noticed that the hero was again pretending to be important, and urged him to show what he had. After these words, the hero finally made up his mind. The hero turned around, and on his back everyone saw the image of a dragon. Lan immediately noticed that they were not just any robbers to stare at such a thing. However, Fowl recognized this sign as a sorcerer's symbol. True, the shape of the dragon itself was unfamiliar to him. He had never heard of such a thing. The hero bent over the poisoned one and used the magic of the antidote. It was a poison that saps strength. Land exclaimed loudly when he saw the dragon move. The man stood up and exclaimed that he was saved, for he had thought he would not survive. He laughed nervously and admitted that he simply could not believe in his salvation. The hero explained that his system had nothing to do with magic and admitted that he wanted to become useful as soon as possible. Therefore, he asked if he could meet the Duke himself. Before him sat Duke von Anastasia. He claimed to have seen with his own eyes the dragon form of the magic mark that everyone had heard about in stories. He said he had heard of the hero's poisonous abilities and asked him to tell him more. The hero explained that he had the power to control the poison he had once taken, and could neutralize poisons he had already learned to control. Fatten explained that the same poison that had struck Marie was still on the attacker's knife. He asked if the hero could cure his daughter if he took the poison upon himself. The hero replied that he probably could, but his powers had only recently awakened, so he was not sure how powerful they were. The man hesitated a bit, but considering that the other healers were not trustworthy, he had little choice. He asked again if the hero really wanted protection for his home in return, and received confirmation. Ron, despite his audacity, asked him directly to tell him who he was. The Earl later realized that Ron not only had a non-magical system, but was also related to the Marquis of Edvarl. In effect, he was asking them to take a risk, and risk conflict with the powerful House of Edvarl. Looking at him, the hero for some reason decided to refuse and said that as soon as he gained strength, he would immediately leave this country so as not to cause him any trouble, and a temporary shelter was quite enough for him. The man thought for a moment. The hero worried in his mind whether he had answered correctly. One mistake, and he could be mercilessly kicked out of Edvara's house. They looked at each other and the hero realized he could be executed, considered a carrier of dangerous poisonous magic. The man still agreed to help him, so he begs to save his daughter Cura Maria because most likely only he is capable of doing this. Ron smiled and promised he would do his best. A little later, Rondi was shown the knife with which Mrs. Marie had been attacked. The poison on the blade had already dried, but was still dangerous. The hero said that he would first try the usual method. He would take the poison, and would probably faint, so he asked to be carried to the bed afterwards. Lan reassured him, saying that there was no need to worry. Everything had already been prepared for him. A separate guest room was waiting, and he could rest there. Ron thought of this poison, which no one could accurately neutralize and safely ingest. He immediately remembered how painful it had been when he had taken the blood snake venom and mastered this deadly potion. Ron didn't know how much poison his body could handle, so using a potent poison was always risky. If the substance on the blade was several times more deadly than normal, he might die before he could neutralize it. But if he backed down now, he would have to forget about a happy future. A hero named Felix, descended from the Edward family, came here, seeking the freedom he had sought for so long. The hero ran his tongue along the blade of his sword, and the earth around him groaned in pain. But there was nothing he could do when the hero collapsed and fell to his knees. Meanwhile, the system continued to report that the poison in his body was being neutralized. The hero opened his mouth in a silent scream of pain. Land asked Rhonda if he was okay, and with an effort of will, Rhonda replied that he was fine. Although the neutralization was still working, the pain did not leave. He fell from a new, even stronger wave of pain and began rolling across the floor, scattering and smashing everything around him. He grabbed the shard of the vase with his bare hand. The sharp edges cut into his skin, cutting it until it bled. The hero closed his eyes and the earth excitedly called his name. The neutralization process was still ongoing. Finally, the poison was completely neutralized, and the beautiful skill of marriage was activated. Now it was possible to analyze the target's condition. The hero mastered the magic of attacks using poison. Light poison was used for treatment. From now on, poison became available for use. He looked at his palms and exclaimed, "What a vile poison they prepared to kill the Duke's daughter." The hero learned that this poison belongs to a dragon species that appears only once every few years. This is a very dangerous creature that no one has yet managed to defeat. The power of its poison is incomparable to any other. One mistake is enough to die. But this time, he managed to survive. When he got out of bed, his body was still shaking. He noticed that he was wearing different clothes and wondered how long he had slept. Land entered the room and saw that Ron had finally woken up. Ron immediately said that they needed to get to the lady as soon as possible. The hero met with the Duke, who told him that he had slept for 3 days in a row. The hero apologized, explaining that the poison was much stronger than he thought. When asked whether the hero would eventually be able to neutralize the poison, Duquesne replied that this would not be an obstacle for him. They stopped at the door of Mary's room. The Duke told the hero that the poisoner was their last hope, and asked him to do everything possible. The hero replied that the man could safely count on a wonderful result. They went inside and cautiously approached the princess's bed. The Duke took the Xardian by the hand and asked her to be patient a little longer. Then he turned to the hero and added that he was counting on him. But the Duke warned, if anyone made even the slightest suspicious movement, he would not hesitate to use magic. The hero enthusiastically promised to remember this. Then he apologized and stepped out from behind the Duke to address Marie. A young girl was lying on the bed. A window appeared in front of the girl with her characteristics. It showed her name, information about the eagle's emblem, and wind magic. The health graph showed poisoning with a weak poison. It was clear that out of 43 health points, only 5 remained. The hero was surprised to see her status, and decided that it must be some kind of dragon ability related to poison. He noticed how an orange light flickered around her body. Most likely, she had been cast with a slow healing spell to prolong her life. But even with such spells, she was doomed and would soon die. The hero held out his hand to her, determined not to let that happen. The poison on the blade belonged to a purple dragon. Only the poison of a green dragon could neutralize it. And although it was believed that there was no antidote to the poison of a purple dragon, which no one had ever been able to defeat, He was going to prove the opposite right now. The hero uttered a spell, and the poison from his breath spread through his body like a river. The Duke froze, watching the glow in amazement. The hero touched the girl's hand using his magical power. He used counter magic to neutralize the dragon's poison. The hero fell to his knees, realizing that one neutralization had taken away more than half of his magical power. If he used even more to enhance the effect, he risked being exhausted to the last drop. But he could not retreat. Here he had no right to defeat, so he gave all his strength to save her. The hero unleashed all his magic, and the girl began to show signs of life. The Duke anxiously called out for his daughter. Dark worlds of magic swirled around the entire bedroom. Finally, everything quieted down, and all the magic dissolved without a trace. The Duke watched in amazement as the hero breathed heavily and tried to catch his breath, wanting to know what condition he was in. Looking up, he noticed that his health level had increased to 17, and his body condition was marked as excellent. The hero smiled, because everything worked out. He was able to cure her. The Duke approached his daughter, and she woke up. The girl called her father, and he exclaimed happily that everything had finally worked out. The hero watched from afar, then quietly left, leaving them alone. Some time passed. The Duke once again sincerely thanked Ron and announced that from now on he would live in the duchy as an honored guest. The hero thanked him. An honored guest is almost like a guest who is welcomed, like a sage or a warrior. The Duke noted that in order to receive protection, it is important to act openly. If everything is transparent, the family of the Marquis Warhol will be afraid to do anything. The Duke noticed that there were subtleties here. In order to receive him as an honored guest, he asked the hero to fulfill one request: to assure that Ron could live peacefully and freely, but on one condition. The Duke had tasked him with uncovering those behind the assassination attempt on Marie, a task he had assumed as an honored guest with free reign. Having finished the conversation, Ron walked down the corridor, muttering that it was always easy to talk. The servants discussed the guest of honor in whispers. After all, it was the first time the Duke had invited someone to his place. The hero wanted to sleep terribly, but from behind he heard a reproach. "Don't act like a lazy person." The hero assured Marie that he would become even stronger and would always protect her. She just laughed and replied that she was looking forward to it. The heroes reached a new place. They were amazed, because it is not surprising that the villa of the Dukes of the Estesia family is so luxurious. Mary suggested that they finally start their magical training. She said that behind the estate there was a wonderful place for training, and suggested that they go there. When they arrived, it turned out that this place was ideal for practicing magic. No one was watching here, and there was no need to be afraid of extraneous eyes. The girl asked with curiosity if he would show her his magic. The young man agreed. He stretched out his hand, summoning a terrible poison. He created a glowing sphere in the air, putting all his magical power into it. A large black ball suddenly appeared in front of him. He called for help from a poisonous magic dragon, an explosive dragon, and sent it straight into the tree. After a strong impact, the tree cracked and fell to the ground with a thud. The girl said it was incredibly powerful. It wasn't just a powerful magic attack, it also dissolved nearby poison when hit. It was indeed very dangerous magic. It was definitely not something you should do on the estate. She poked with her stick and noticed that the poisonous slime seemed to dissolve objects. If that happened in the manor, the floor would definitely cave in. The hero replied that he would try to change the type of poison. The girl agreed and allowed the hero to act as he pleased without restrictions. He immediately created a new ball, which no longer resembled the previous one. He was completely focused. The girl remembered the moment she first saw him, and how she had promised herself to become stronger to protect him. These memories brought a smile to her face. He turned to her and asked what had happened. She was confused and only now noticed that he had already cast 10 spells and the magic was still working. He calmly added that he could continue. He explained that strong poisons require a lot of energy, but now he only uses weak ones. She became curious and asked what these weak poisons were. Marie explained that they usually didn't use that much magic. Even 10 fireballs were enough to drain their strength. To this, the boy confidently replied that he had a huge supply of magical energy. Thinking about magical reserves, Ron remembered his childhood, how his brother Felix trained hard and constantly received praise from everyone around him. Then he dreamed of having the same talent as his brother. Mira asked what would happen if the strongest poison was used. The guy replied that he hadn't tested it yet and therefore didn't know. He wondered if he could try it himself. The girl allowed him to act and he began to cast spells. As he concentrated, he realized that he was now a completely different person than he had been before. Now in his hands is the most powerful poison, draconic poison magic. He used dragon venom magic, the purple dragon spell. At the boy's command, the dragon-shaped spell rushed forward straight at the target. The black fog spread over a vast distance, penetrating further and further into the forest. Both the boy and the girl froze in place, stunned by what they saw. He turned to her and assured her that he would do everything possible to ensure that no one could defeat him. She smiled in return and said that she felt invincible next to such strength. The boy moved deeper into the forest, deciding that he should experience this poisonous magic even better. He asked the girl for permission to go further on his own, and she warned him. The further from the villa, the more dangerous it was. There were monsters to be found, so it was worth being careful. He remembered Marie's words that he could defeat anyone, but everything turned out to be much more complicated. The poison of the purple dragons was available only to the chosen ones from the highest circles. The hero himself did not know how much it cost, but he assumed that the price was sky high. He understood that if someone paid that much money for an assassin, they were definitely a serious opponent. And if he was found by the servants of House Edvarl and had to fight his brother and sister, he simply wouldn't have the ability to use a powerful spell like purple dragon poison. The hero realized that he needed to understand the possibilities of his own magic more deeply and learn to better control it. He needs practice. 3 goblins suddenly appeared in front of him. All of them looked cheerful. Their health indicators were at their maximum. The hero immediately fired a poison bullet with a weak poison directly at the enemy, hit him without missing a beat, and began to closely observe his reaction. After he hit all 3, he quickly assessed the situation. His health had decreased by 9 units and his condition was poisoned. A dead goblin fell right in front of the hero. The hero thought quickly and realized the poison gradually depletes health, reducing life points by about 1 point every second, until death occurs. He had no time to catch his breath when another goblin lunged at him from the side again. The hero also used a debilitating poison, firing a special bullet at the target. When the projectile hit the enemy, the hero's health points decreased before his eyes, but the poisoning never occurred. The hero hits the goblin again and notices. The poison bullet deals damage on impact, and poisoning is an additional effect that doesn't trigger every time, but randomly. Choosing another goblin as his next victim, the hero decided to try a new type of poison, paralyzing. He threw a bullet with a paralyzing potion at the monster. The poison worked instantly. The goblin's health was reduced by half, and he himself remained motionless, completely paralyzed. The hero assumed that this was probably a random effect as well. He created a new orb in his palm. The hero placed his hand on the monster's head and applied the deadly poison. The goblin died instantly. The hero thought for a moment. It began to dawn on him how exactly one could poison an enemy. There are 2 ways, from a distance and directly. From what the hero saw, the archer deals physical blows from a distance, but the poison acts unpredictably. If you enter into close combat and touch this poison, the effect is guaranteed, but much more dangerous. The hero shuddered when he heard Madame Marie's scream. At that very moment, nearby, in the clearing, the knights of the county were engaged in a fierce battle with the bandits. Several mercenaries in black easily dealt with the soldiers. One of them rushed towards Marie, and she froze in place, just watching everything with wide eyes, unable to move. The girl remembered how the double had almost taken her life, and screamed in horror. The hero suddenly appeared nearby and released the poisonous magic of a dragon. An explosive mouth, with a black and smoky dragon head, hung right in front of the bandit's face. The huge mouth closed around the mercenary's body and took him away. The hero stood before Marie, shouting her name, while the bodies of the robbers rose high into the sky in the tightly clenched jaws of the dragons. The hero loudly promised to protect her, and the girl watched in admiration as their enemies helplessly cried out in fear. The dragons plunged headlong down and landed on the ground with a thud. 3 of the attackers died immediately after the collision. Their bodies lay on the ground, torn apart by the powerful blow. The girl was trembling, and the boy put his hand on her shoulder, helping her calm down. He knelt down in front of her, gently assuring her that everything would be okay, and that he would definitely protect her. She called him. It was as if he had saved her again, and now she felt a debt to him that she could never repay. She felt safe with him. She thanked Rhonda gratefully. A little later, already in the Duke's possessions, the man, having learned that the attackers were named Dansur and Tensor, assumed that they were probably the Connie brothers. The hero asked if their name was known in certain circles, to which the man smiled and said, "Well, it is, especially among hired killers." He said they were ruthless, capable of chopping up even a baby, almost invisible, and if it hadn't been for Ron, everything could have ended very badly. The man was glad they were saved, but he noted that if someone was able to hire these 3, there weren't that many suspects left. The hero replied that he was happy to help. The Duke said that he was once again in his debt to him, even if Ron ceased to be an honored guest and left. He promised to prepare a considerable sum for him, enough for several years. The hero asked if he had understood everything correctly, and the man confirmed, reassuring him there was no need to worry. The Duke's reconnaissance revealed no pursuers or signs that House Edvar was searching for anything. He said that everyone at the Marquis's estate was sure that the hero had died of poisoning, and if he remained silent, no one would suspect anything. The hero was glad that he no longer had to look back and now finally felt true freedom. But the hero was tormented by the thought. What would happen to Marie if he left the Duke's house now? The Duke immediately assured him. Of course, Ron could stay, and the Duke himself, to be honest, wanted to ask for this at least for Marie's sake. The hero replied that he also thought so. He was not going to go anywhere until all the problems were resolved, because he wanted to protect Madame Marie. The Duke was delighted with such determination. The Duke announced that after the attack by Connie's brothers, they decided to add another guard to better protect Marie. The new guard's name is Amanda. She is a female knight, and now they will take care of Marie's safety together. The hero was surprised to learn that the new guard is a female knight. The Duke noted that despite being a woman, her skill is beyond doubt. She is one of the 3 strongest in their knight order. Her character is strict, but she will definitely work well with the hero. A little later, the hero's eyes widened in surprise. He managed to jump back from the blow, and at the same moment the ground beneath his feet cracked. The hero staggered from the piercing blow and fell, flying to the side. The girl standing above him ironically remarked, "That's all, empty words," and asked if he really intended to protect the lady in this way. On the night of Sia, Amanda Magnaria shouted to him that if he truly wanted to protect Marie, he must kill her. The hero, wiping his face, could not believe his own madness. He had almost killed an important member of the Duke's Night Guard, who had once given him shelter, and the Duke himself boasted that it was a pleasure to work with such people. Meanwhile, the girl introduced herself and announced that from today, by order of the Duke himself, she would become Madame Marie's personal bodyguard. Amanda asked him if his name was really Ron and not Borcade. The hero confirmed that it was, and then Anne added that the Duke had ordered them both to guard Madame Marie together, and she was glad to meet him. The girl remembered that when Connie's brothers attacked Madame Marie in the villa, the hero was not there, and wondered why that had happened. The boy replied that they had gone to the villa to practice witchcraft, and he wanted to try out a new spell, so he went to the area where the monsters were found. Amanda remarked that it seemed as if Rond was putting his magical training ahead of Ms. Marie's safety. Rond objected, saying that wasn't the case. He simply thought it was wrong to take Ms. Marie to a dangerous place in a wheelchair. The girl exclaimed that at that very moment she was attacked, and he did not even foresee such a danger. The hero admitted that he had indeed been frivolous, but then he was only an honored guest. Amanda did not pay attention, shouted in response, "So what does it matter that you are just a guest?" She reminded him of his promise to protect Marie, and the hero immediately remembered that it was the absolute truth. The knight said that true protection is when you are ready to give your own life, and asked Fronda if she had enough determination. The hero remained silent, and she asked if he realized that the most dangerous thing about a task was working with someone who lacked determination. Therefore, she decided to test whether he was worthy of protecting the lady, to assess his abilities and willpower. The girl took a fighting stance and used magic. She amazed everyone with a powerful explosion of fire magic. The hero was amazed when he learned that she also possessed magic. He immediately understood. If such a thing were to happen to him, nothing good would come of it. One of the shells exploded very close by, and the hero flew forward from the blast wave. The girl watched as the smoke from the explosion still swirled in the air and said, "This is a training ground for the Night Order. A hero has no right to hold back." Suddenly, a bright light shone from the fog. A bullet filled with deadly poison flew swiftly from the clouds of smoke towards the girl. She managed to cast a protective spell on her staff in time. She struck the sphere with her wand and shattered it to pieces. The hero watched in shock as his spell vanished. The girl rushed to him, asking what had happened. She fell to the ground and immediately asked what was going on. But suddenly she froze, noticing something strange to the side. Seeing the hero, she quickly hit him and said that he was still weak, so he just flew away. She screamed that it wasn't enough, outraged by his relentless determination. Suddenly, something hit her body sharply. She fell to her knees and asked in despair what he had done. The guy said he injected the poison directly into her body. Before hitting her, he touched her hand. Ron reported that there was now a deadly poison in her body, and she would die in 50 seconds. The girl finally understood what poisonous magic was. The hero assured her that this was enough, and now he would be able to neutralize the poison. But instead of begging the enemy for mercy, the girl defiantly declared that such poison was a trifle for her. She showed the stone in her palm and squeezed it tightly. This caused the stone to shine with a bright light. Ron immediately recognized it as a magical healing stone, something so precious that it was the first time he had seen it with his own eyes. By this time, the girl had already risen to her feet. Health really returned. The poison disappeared. The hero was surprised. This magic stone not only removes negative effects, but also restores strength. He wondered how much it cost. Amanda, without hesitation, announced that it was time to move on. The hero gets up, but at that moment someone from the side asks what they are doing here. Both turn at the voice. It was Ms. Mira. Rhonda was surprised to see that she could stand already. The girl assured him that her legs were fine, but that was not the main thing right now. She shouted and asked how her guards could have gotten into a fight. Amanda explained that it wasn't a fight, just a test of Rhonda's resolve. Mira suggested they shake hands and make up. Both of them, looking intently at each other and showing no emotion, nevertheless shook hands. The girl praised them and suggested that they now live together, impatiently waiting for an answer. Both immediately agreed. Then she said that her father wanted to talk to them. She said that it seemed that the Duke had already found out who was behind the attempt on her life. At the Duke's estate, a man reported that they had found out who was behind the assassination attempt on Marie. Amanda asked if this was true, and who dared to attack her mistress. The man replied that the name of the specific attacker was still unknown, but the main instigator had already been identified. The Duke mentioned the name of the Marquis of Greenwich, and remarked that it was to be hoped that this was not all a prank by Lord Greenwich. Amanda did not understand why Greenwich would do this. Ron explained that the Marquis was actually attacking a member of the Duke's family, and this was very dangerous. A short-sighted step could split the entire kingdom. The man thought for a moment and said that he was probably in danger of poison now too, but he himself was of little importance. If something bad happened, the Duke wanted them to focus on protecting Mary. Mar asked her father not to say such things. The hero asked what was going on, and the Duke explained. There was a serious struggle going on in Yugdia between important political factions. In short, he and Greenwich were arguing over different paths to the same political goal. The hero asked the man why he was so sure that the Greenwich house was the culprit. The man replied that they learned this through reports from spies working among their people. The man showed off his weapon and added that the knife that had first attacked Marie was nothing like this one. Such knives were not made or sold in the lands of Astasia. They could only be found on the black markets of some areas of the Greenwich Marquisate. Marie understood everything. Garot promised her that no matter what happened, he would always protect Madame Marie. Amanda loudly declared that without determination this task would not be accomplished, and promised to take it all upon herself. She would protect Ms. Marie, even if it meant sacrificing her own life. They exchanged glances with dissatisfied expressions on their faces. The Duke said he relied on them both and asked them to act together, starting with organizing a celebratory evening in honor of Marie's recovery, which will take place next week. He said he was expecting a lot of guests. It was a holiday and he didn't want anything to spoil it, but everyone should be prepared. The day of the party. The hero walked around the city, wondering what gift to choose. He remembered Amanda yelling at him, saying it was a celebration in honor of the lady's recovery, and he hadn't even prepared a gift. Then he made the excuse that he had to be with Marie as a bodyguard and didn't have time to go out into the city to get a gift. Amanda smiled and showed her gift, explaining that she had prepared everything in advance. The hero was surprised when he found out how she had time to do it. The knight reproachfully remarked that it was unworthy to hide behind work and ignore the holiday. In Estacia, everyone is obliged to prepare a gift, because the lady is always looking forward to it. If she says so, the hero gives up. Amanda sighed heavily and said that one guard would be enough for the party, but for now he should find another option. The hero walked leisurely through the city thinking, saying is easy, but what exactly are you going to offer him? Besides, the hat was quite annoying. He borrowed a headdress from Landy to hide his face, but the hat only drew more attention to the old man's strange clothes. The hero realized that he could not compete with the nobles in money or appearance. So what is the way out in such a situation? Somewhere to the side, the hero noticed a merchant who was offering passers-by to try their luck. They said that magic stones were for just a silver coin. The hero became interested and, imperceptibly eavesdropping, decided to observe further. The stranger asked the owner if there was a poisoned dragon stone among these stones. The hero was surprised by such a request. The merchant replied that if he was lucky, perhaps one would be found. He explained that there were two reasons why they were not recognized. Either they were simply not noticed, or they lacked enough magic to be fully utilized. The merchant suggested that this item might contain extremely complex magic that modern technology simply couldn't detect, and if he chose the second option, he would obtain S-level magic, the kind that only outstanding magicians possess, when the poisonous dragon is no longer just a fiction. The hero wondered about magic stones. He asked the old man if he had ever seen anyone pull out a truly lucky stone. The man replied that a merchant who discusses his customers quickly goes bankrupt, so he can't tell anything. To which the stranger remarked, "So it's like playing the lottery, where it's impossible to win." Ron invited them to come closer and look at the stones, allowing them to choose any. The boy thought, if he couldn't beat his rivals in price or appearance, he might as well take a chance and try his luck. So he asked the seller to show him the stones from the furthest box. He began rummaging through the box, and suddenly felt a pleasant warmth on his back. Perhaps it was a sign to choose the very item he was currently holding in his hand. He chose a black stone and told the merchant that he wanted it. The man replied that the price was 1 silver coin. The stranger asked the hero why he had chosen this ugly stone, since there were more beautiful ones lying nearby. The hero replied that although the stone was not attractive, it had been shoved far into the corner. Perhaps that was why this chest existed. The hero thought that he looked as if no one needed him, and saw a resemblance to himself in this. After apologizing, he said that he had to hurry back and said goodbye. The stranger admired this darkness, because it seemed to him amazingly beautiful. A little later, in this alley, a stranger was holding a stone in his hands and assuring the owner that he was not to blame for what had happened. Sitting on the man's body, he remarked that he was one of those who lost his mind as soon as he noticed true beauty. Late that evening, Mira thanked everyone who had come to celebrate her recovery that day. The number of guests was incredible. Yoro hoped in her mind that everything would go smoothly, but she could not rule out the possibility that someone related to Ed Warhol's family was among those present. He believed that he had done the right thing by choosing the servant's mask for secret protection. Watching the guests give gifts to Marie, he understood that it was not easy for a servant to stay close to the mistress. Fortunately, Amanda was nearby. It was she who at that moment offered to take the gifts from Marie. A woman approached Marie and began to ask about her well-being. It turned out that it was her aunt. The hero immediately saw that the girl had completely recovered, and this sincerely comforted him. She smiled so brightly that he could not take his eyes off her. He jerked sharply, remembering that he had to work so as not to arouse suspicion. But suddenly a stranger appeared in front of him. The guy stopped and apologized, but in response he heard only rudeness. The young man asked if the hero was really watching Marie. The hero denied it, but the young man didn't let him finish. He indignantly declared that the simple-minded boy had almost run into him, and even dared to fall in love with Marie, and for that he deserved 1,000 deaths. At the same time, he added that today was a festive evening, and thanks to his drunkenness, he wouldn't do anything, so the hero should thank him. The hero thanked him politely, although he still couldn't understand who this person was in front of him. The young aristocrat noted that he had come a long way and did not want to ruin everything through rash actions. Otherwise, all his efforts would be in vain. He walked up to the crowd where Marie was standing and greeted her, noting that they hadn't seen each other in a while. The girl replied and confirmed that she had indeed called him Randy. Time passed, and the hall gradually emptied. The hero mentally noted that everything had gone smoothly, without any surprises. He noticed the girl from the side. She was completely intact, so he could breathe a sigh of relief. He went out to her on the balcony and asked if she was okay. She assured him that she was fine, and added that Ron must have gotten tired of constantly watching over and serving her. She added that it was thanks to him and Amanda that she was able to attend a wonderful party today, and thanked him. Then she asked if the hero remembered Ron Randy, who was also at the celebration. The hero replied that he did, and asked if he was a close friend of this lady. The girl said that he was her fiancé but had recently become very distant, so her future husband would probably be different. The hero himself did not understand why he felt relieved when he learned that his bride could change, although marriages among aristocrats are indeed far from freedom of choice. The hero remembered how Randy had behaved and was angry that such a person was Miss Marie's fiancé. He felt sorry for Miss Marie, because she herself did not want to communicate with Randy at all. He decided that if Marie had to marry someone she didn't love, it would be better to be with her himself. He jerked back and shook his head, not understanding why he had such thoughts at all. After all, if he dared to do such a thing, Duke Stacia would simply wipe him off the face of the earth. It was urgent to shift the conversation to something else. After a moment of silence, the hero finally said that the moon was surprisingly beautiful today. The girl called out to him in embarrassment. He looked in her direction in surprise. She thought about this night, about the shining moon. And now they both silently look at the sky. Such an old-fashioned but sincere confession. She enthusiastically gave it an A. She considered herself a clever woman, but she was curious to know what Rhonda thought of her, so she brought up the subject of the fiancé, and got the perfect answer in return. They fell silent again. The hero couldn't understand if he had said something unnecessary. Remembering the gift, he handed it to Marie and said it was in honor of her recovery. The girl was surprised to see the magic stone, and the boy added that he thought she would definitely like such a gift. He said it was time for him to go, as he still had some cleaning to do. The girl shouted after him, thanking him sincerely. She said she was infinitely happy and promised to take care of him. Several days passed. The Duke reported that the matter was nearing completion. The hero decided to ask again. As the musicians explained, in simple terms, they had gathered all the fragments and cards to drive the Marquis of Greenwich into a dead end, and now all that was left to do was make the final move. If he informs them of this, it means that the enemy is in a difficult situation and will most likely begin to act more desperately. The Dukes declared that their goal was clear. They should not kill Marie, but rather kidnap her. By forcing her to marry someone from Greenwich, they would have a chance at rebirth. He said that initially the Greenwich and Anastasia families were going to betroth their children, but due to political differences, they never signed a contract. But it seems that the Greenwiches did not give up their thoughts about marrying Marie. The main character was surprised by this. If the Greenwiches wanted to be related to Anastasia so much, then why did they try to kill her? The Duke himself does not understand this situation and has not planned any political marriage. But one thing is clear. The Greenwich family has planned to kidnap Marie for her own safety. It is he who will announce to them who will be her fiancé. The Duke announced that Randy von Greenwich was the heir to the Marquis of Greenwich. The hero was even surprised to hear this news. The hero finally understood. That vile guy was the heir to the Greenwich family and the fiancé of Lady Marie. That was why Lona had spoken so cryptically then. Given the feud between the Eastasia and Greenwich families, this is likely true. However, if you look at Randy's behavior at the party, it becomes clear that he still hasn't given up hope of winning over Mira. The Duke warned that the risk of kidnapping was now very high, and after the failed assassination attempt, murder could not be ruled out. So he urged everyone to remain as vigilant as possible for at least another month. The protagonist understood everything and promised to do everything possible to protect Marie. Some time passed, and they learned that the one who stood before the girls had appeared in a new role. Curious, they asked what had happened to him. He replied that he was now working as a butler and would continue to act according to the rules of the butler. Amanda asked what that meant, and he explained that in this form she would be free to act as her bodyguard, while he would remain with the hostess as a butler and keep her safe. Amanda immediately picked up on this. Was this really a hint that her security was not impeccable? The hero explained that if, say, poison was mixed into the food, it would be easier for him to deal with it if he was nearby. Marie, who was standing behind, was sincerely glad that Ron would always be by her side. Marie said she liked the idea, and Amanda immediately agreed, and the hostess agreed too. Marie added that the double layer of security would put her at ease. She was invited to Tesla's house the following week, so she had Rhonda learn the manners of a butler by then. But from Rhonda's words, it was obvious that it wouldn't be easy. A week passed. Amanda stood at the door, and Marie was already dressed nicely. Ron told the lady that her carriage was waiting. She smiled and remarked that the hero was already acting like a real butler, and she would be happy to take him with her to Tesla's house. He thanked her and explained that Tesla was her childhood friend. But because of the suspicious timing of the invitation, he still checked but found no connection to the house in Greenwich, so she could communicate calmly. Marie pointed out that he could be relied on even as a bodyguard. He replied that he would not let anyone get close to her under any circumstances, so she could rest easy. Marie objected that the very idea of going out for a walk in such dangerous times seemed too risky. However, he disagreed, but she added that she decided to go precisely because it was dangerous. If she had locked herself in the house after the assassination attempt, it would have been a disgrace to the Duke's family. At such moments, you need to go out to people and prove that you are strong and invincible. Ron noted that she was really strong, and finally they set off. Later, at Tesla's house, a young girl looked closely at Rhonda and wondered if he was the same man. Marie confirmed this, and her friend called the hero. He came up and asked how he could help. Then the girl said what she had heard. He was also guarding Mrs. Marie. The guy confirmed this and said that he has to be both a security guard and a butler at the same time. That's how he makes a living. The girl, looking at Marie, asked Rhonda if he wasn't stupid if he didn't understand anything. And then she emphasized that he should take good care of Marie. Later, the crew began to be accompanied by guards. The hero wondered if he really seemed so unreliable. Maris wondered if Tesla had told him that. He confirmed it, adding that if the opponent decided that he was unreliable, then perhaps there would be less tension, and that would only be for the better. The girl noted that it was unlikely that Tesla had meant that. Ron winked jokingly and assured her that she had nothing to worry about. He would protect her properly. She was pleased, but asked if this was all just part of his duties as the guest of honor. He hesitated for a moment before answering. Suddenly, their carriage shook unexpectedly. The girl screamed in fear, but the hero quickly calmed her down, begging her not to leave him. He wondered warily if this was an attack, but the street was silent. He decided that if this had been an attack, Amanda and the steelman would have already engaged in battle. He looked out of the carriage and suddenly froze. Amanda was lying on the ground, and he was calling her in confusion, not understanding what had happened. Someone was standing on the roof of the carriage, casting a spell. The hero froze in place, sensing something unusual. He instantly jumped out with the girl as soon as the carriage exploded. Holding the mirror close to them, they quickly leapt off the cliff and flew down. The girl called out to him, and he shouted that she should not let go of his hand under any circumstances. Previously, the poison man used a conch shell, which allowed them to land safely. The hero, hugging Marie close, asks if she's okay. The girl nods confidently and adds with a smile that poisonous magic can be extremely useful. He says he used a spell that momentarily turns poison semi-solid, creating a tough shell. He came up with the trick when he was trying to save a cat that was falling off a cliff. She added that this spell can serve as protection, but its effect lasts only 2 to 3 seconds. And suddenly a ball of lightning flies in their direction. The young man notices this and instantly stops the ball with a spell, this time using a poison bullet with a weak poison. The bullet disappears into the air, and someone on the hill warns the hero not to overdo it and reminds him the girl must be caught alive. The stranger greets Rhonda, emphasizing that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The hero suddenly remembers that he has seen this stranger before, and asks in surprise how he knows his name. The man replied that he had learned a lot of interesting things and called Rhonda a sorceress who possessed poisonous magic. He says that for almost 1,000 years, no master of poison magic has appeared among people who do not practice magical systems. To top it all off, it turned out that the gloomy and eternally dissatisfied Rhonda possessed poisonous magic. The man smiles and says that how could he not be happy if the poisonous magic was born from the pain when the hero's father personally tried to kill him. He begins to attack Rhonda, loudly demanding that he show his true capabilities. Ron assumes that the enemies are trying to capture Marie alive. However, he realizes that for some reason this man is showing interest in him. The hero decides to draw his opponent away from Marie, creating a protective barrier of poisonous magic around her. He lingers, then retreats, drawing the man's attention to himself. The man approaches Rhonda with lightning speed, enveloping himself in bolts of lightning magic. The hero instantly strikes the opponent with his lightning speed, but the opponent still manages to dodge the blow. He's about to use the poison magic and gives the man a look that makes him feel creepy. The stranger steps back from the boy in fear, laughing and surprised at the same time. He throws the knife in Rhonda's direction, but she deftly dodges it, and the blade clicks into the tree. The man explains that poison magic kills with one touch, so he won't risk engaging in close combat. The heroine, looking at the knife, remembers that this is exactly what the maid wanted to attack Marie with. However, during the investigation, it turned out that the maid was simply following someone's orders. He understands that an ordinary person would never get their hands on a knife smeared with purple dragon venom. Ron claims that it was his opponent who threw the knife at the maid and planned to attack the mistress. But suddenly the hero is struck by lightning. The hero is seriously wounded and falls to the ground. Maria is stunned by this, and the man is happy that he managed to hit the guy. The stranger noticed that Ron was still breathing and was surprised to praise his endurance. Not everyone could withstand such a blow and stay alive. The man adds that he always makes his victims remember his name before finishing them off, and orders them to listen to him carefully. He leans towards Rhonda and quietly says his name, Albrecht. The man holds a knife to the hero's face and strictly orders him to remember his name, so that even in the afterlife everyone will know who killed you. Marie, whose protective barrier has disappeared, loudly shouts the hero's name and reaches out to him. But all of Brett's fighters turn to her. Brett himself announces that he has been ordered to capture her alive. Turning to her, he adds that he doesn't care what condition she's in. The main thing is that she's alive. After that, he heads to Marie. But suddenly a large magic ball appears behind the man. The ball flies straight at Ulbricht, but he manages to dodge, and the shell explodes nearby, only slightly touching him. At this moment, 4 magical spheres fly straight at him, completely surrounding him on all sides. All the bullets explode, and a girl with a gun appears from above. She is the one who created these deadly spheres. She chants a flame spell and fire suddenly erupts around her weapon. It hits exactly where the entire breakfast was, and the ground beneath it collapses. However, the man instantly jumped back, avoiding both the explosions and the impact. Amanda Knight comes to Marie's aid and asks if she's okay. The girl replies that she is fine, mentions Rhonda, and the knight meanwhile asks Marie to give something to the hero while she distracts the enemy. Amanda hands over the magic healing stone and says that it saved her too, but emphasizes that it was the last such stone. Marie listens attentively, and at that moment Albrecht remarks that she should have just lay there and not moved. He adds that if Amanda is so eager to die, he will help her. At least her name will be known in the afterlife. With these words, he draws his sword. The man introduces himself and instantly attacks the knight, ordering him to remember his name and die. A strong blow causes the opponent's weapons to clash. Marie cured Rhonda, and the boy immediately thanked her, but the girl explained that it was all thanks to Amanda's magical healing stone. The hero is surprised to notice Amanda, who has just appeared, and looks towards the scene of the battle. The knight deftly deflects the blows with her shield, but it still pushes her back, and Rhonda calls for her to return. The girl rushes at the enemy, brandishing a weapon that is still burning with flames. The hero remembered their agreement with Amanda. If a formidable enemy appeared, she would take the blow, become a shield, and his job would be to take Maria away as quickly as possible and think only about her safety. He adds that if she wants to die, then let her not care, but Ron replies that he can't just leave her to die. Amanda told him not to even doubt her resolve, regardless of any feelings. She reminded the hero that the most important thing was Marie's safety, and if necessary, he should leave her and go. Ron looks around and notices a collapsed rock block to the east, a river flowing to the west, and beyond it a steep cliff that they definitely can't climb, and the sounds of battle can be heard from the south. The only way to salvation leads north. There is a forest beyond the bridge, and if he and Marie can get there, they can hide and escape. But the bridge is located quite far away, and if they are noticed, anyone who breaks through it will easily catch up with the escapees thanks to its speed. But there is no other choice, so Ron asks Marie if she can run, and the girl confidently answers that she can. He says that as soon as he gives the signal, she should run towards the bridge with all her might, adding that he will follow her under any circumstances. He asks her not to look back, but only to look forward and run, and Mario obeys him. Amanda fights and screams, turning to Rhonda. "What are you doing? Get out of here, quickly!" She conjures a fireball and throws it straight at the enemy, but he deftly dodges. The man wonders if she has any more inventions left, because he has seen this technique before. Ron and Marie race headlong towards the bridge, and the destructive onslaught has almost caught up with them. "The man is brandishing a sword, Marie." The man notices this and calls out to the girl. But suddenly Ron appears behind Albrecht and declares that no matter how fast the man is, he will still be able to intercept him as soon as he gets close. The hero poisons the enemy with deadly poison. The opponent falls to the ground, and Ron is glad that he managed to land a blow. However, suddenly, as Marie approaches the bridge, lightning strikes it. The bridge collapses right in front of her, and the girl watches in horror. Suddenly, Ron notices Albrecht standing right on the bridge beam. The hero is surprised and asks why the man is still moving, because he must have injected him with poison. The opponent explains, "If you have to fight a poison mage, be sure to stock up on a magic stone that protects against poison in advance." Ron remembers the man persistently warning him to stay away from close combat. In response, Albrecht explains that this is also one of the features of this technology. And at the same moment, lightning strikes the rock. A huge rock suddenly falls with a crash between Amanda and the heroes. The man tells Marie and Rondi that now they have nowhere to run, and not even the knight will save them. He smiles slyly and declares that it's time to end this. Albrecht says he always gets the job done in 5 minutes, because spending more time is somehow indecent. He added that there were only 30 seconds left and praised Rhonda for making sure he had every moment. The man declares that this is where the hero's adventures end, and causes a thunderclap along with a sound wave. But Ron delays the attack by using the purple dragon's poisonous magic. Bricht watches in delight as the dragon's venom absorbs lightning. He really enjoys the spectacle. Rhonda now has the dragon under control. The poisonous dragon, having absorbed all the lightning, confidently heads towards the enemy. But instead of fear, the enemy is filled with delight. After all, the legendary magic that disappeared 1,000 years ago has come to life before his eyes. The dragon grabs Albrecht, and together they fall into the abyss. Ree and a tired Rondé are happy about this. The hero says that he will check everything himself and asks the girl to stay where she is because it is dangerous to get any closer. The landslide has made everything very risky. She listens to him and asks him once again to be careful. The guy looks down and thinks, even if that man survives, he still won't be able to get out of there. He admits that Brecht is a real dangerous mercenary, and if the Hrivniks did all this, then Marie is in even greater danger. But suddenly Brecht jumps on a boulder and declares that constantly thinking about your position and trying to distract the dragon at the last moment is complete crap. Rond is sincerely surprised by the appearance of his opponent, But despite this, he mockingly notes that the hero is not at all impressive. The spell of Lightning Island fell on all breakfasts. The hero realizes that he has spent too much magic, and now the enemy will be able to respond with a counterattack. Marie rushes forward and stands between Ron and the attack, protecting him. But just as the lightning is rapidly approaching them, the small bag around the girl's neck suddenly begins to glow brightly. The hero opens his eyes and finds himself in an unfamiliar place, not understanding where he is. A forest spread out before him, where giant mushrooms grew. Ron turns and calls out to Marie, but suddenly notices that she is lying on the ground with her clothes torn and her eyes closed. He calls her. The girl wakes up and happily says that she is happy to see him unharmed. But the hero becomes embarrassed, blushes and points to her clothes. A branch caught her skirt and tore off a piece of fabric, so the girl looks around in confusion, not understanding how it happened, and awkwardly covers her legs. Ran wonders what could have brought them to this mysterious place. He recalls that at the very moment when Albrecht's blow almost hit him, he thought Marie's wallet suddenly lit up. The hero asks what was in the purse, and the girl replies, there was a magic stone that Ron had given her. But as soon as she opens the purse, she is overcome by an unexpected surprise. She takes a damaged stone out of her pocket. The guy claims that even if the artifact crumbled, it is definitely the same stone that he gave. Marie realized that the stone had indeed worked, and they found themselves in the middle of the forest. She says that the stone she has is similar to a magical teleportation stone. Her father didn't even manage to collect all of these stones because they are extremely rare. This surprises Ron. The artifact turned out to be too expensive and valuable. He can't figure out how this stone ended up in that suspicious hole in the ground. Marie laughs a little and says that Ron has saved her again. The hero, blushing a little, admits that this time it was she who saved him, and then jokes that when they return home, Amanda will definitely kill him. He advises Marie to turn back, but the girl warns him. A tree is already rushing at him from behind. Ron reacts instantly and poisons the tree, causing it to die immediately. The girl was ready for such a swift attack, and the hero noted that if the enemy did not use healing magic, he would cope on his own. Marie reveals that the evil tree is actually Trent, a notorious forest killer. He is surprised that she is so familiar with monsters. Trends depend on where people live, the girl notes, adding that it can be difficult. She adds that such trends are visible across the continent, and Ron notes that they need to move on. The hero says he will go first and deal with the monsters himself. He asks Marie to follow him and not put herself in danger, so the girl obediently agrees. As they walk together, the boy asked the girl if she was okay. She smiled and assured him that everything was fine, but the main character noticed something unusual in her behavior. He says it's a good thing they're in the forest now, because there are almost no monsters here that attack in packs. I should add that the weakness of poison magic is manifested in one-on-one battles, as it is not very effective against mass attacks. However, even if such enemies are encountered, there are always plenty of hiding places in the forest. Ron and Marie notice an unfamiliar fruit, and the boy wonders if it's safe to eat. The girl looks warily at the bright color of the fruit and begins to worry because such a color could be dangerous. The hero bites into the fruit, immediately feeling a slight sourness, but he likes the juiciness. He offers the fruit to the girl, but she loudly refuses. But Ron emphasizes that it is important to maintain the water balance in the forest, although the girl still has some doubts. The boy reassures her, assuring her that if there is poison in there, he will neutralize it immediately. He remembers that the girl has swallowed saliva several times, and notices how thirsty she is. Marie agrees and takes a bite of the fruit, and the hero instantly casts antidote magic to reduce the effects of the poison. The girl understands that the fruit is juicy and tasty, and this brings her joy. The antidote magic lit up again while she was chewing something. He says that even if the poison is neutralized immediately, it will still hurt every time you eat. To this, Marie replies that she can handle it. However, the hero suggests trying something different. The girl is surprised to notice that she can now eat without any pain. She asks what Ron did, and he replies that he used a magic called microvenom. He explains that micropoison dilutes poison, turning it into medicine, so it can be considered a kind of poison healing magic. Adding that it is now safe to eat the fruit, Marie asks to be given another one. Later they make their way through tall grass where almost nothing is visible, when suddenly a large wasp suddenly flies out from under the grass. Rom creates a poisonous wall right in front of the girl and warns Marie that it was a Class B soldier. Her bite paralyzes the victim with poison for several hours. He remarks that he is well versed in poisons, but the girl just smiles and says that poisonous magic doesn't scare the bee warriors. She warns that this monster attacks in droves, and at that very moment a swarm of bees rapidly approaches them. Ron was overcome with fear when a pack of monsters appeared before him. The hero calls upon the magic of a poison bullet to help, saturating enemies with deadly poison. Marie notices a fight behind the wall and warns Rhonda where monsters may attack from. The hero desperately fights off the bees, but suddenly there are even more of them. A new swarm fills everything around. He notices that one of the monsters intends to fly towards Marie. However, the boy instantly kills the bee, but quickly realizes that there are too many enemies and too little time. He understands that in order to use deadly poison for lightning-fast destruction, he also needs to prepare magic, and he doesn't have that time right now. The hero continues to use poison, which weakens the enemy. It seems to him that this magic is not very powerful, but it can be used quickly over and over again, so in battle it turns out to be even more effective. He is determined to protect Marie from the monsters, but even the strongest of his magics cannot handle them all at once. Ron threatens the bees, but they still fly closer to him. However, the hero uses magic to sharply push them away from him, and the monsters die. He uses the poison again, which weakens the enemy, but notices that several bees have broken through to the other side. The enemies are heading towards Marie, and the girl decides to fight them off. She amplifies wind magic with a powerful explosion. The monsters fly to pieces, and Rhonda enthusiastically praises the girl. Suddenly, one of the bees stings Marie's hand, and she screams in pain. The hero fears that if the poison paralyzes her, the monsters will immediately take advantage of this and finish them off. The girl used wind magic and sent Bee flying like a bullet. Ron runs up to the woman and says that he is neutralizing the poison now, but she is surprised to notice that something has happened to his face. The boy's face is terribly swollen, but Marie notices. The monster's poison is almost ineffective because of the microdose the hero received when he ate the same fruit. The girl happily remarks that now they are not afraid of poisonous monsters, but Ron in response admits that he still does not want to see the bee warriors. After that, they spent another 4 days and 1 night in the forest, hiding in their shelter. The hero carefully looked around and asked Marie if she was cold. The girl replies that she is fine. Ron thinks, the days are still quite bearable, but the nights have become really cold. He looks at the lady and wonders if this life seems new to her. He also reminds her that she is the only daughter of the Duke of Estacia, so she has probably always been under guardianship and has not known real hardships. During these 4 days, in order to somehow quench her hunger and thirst, she ate poisonous berries, endured bee stings, and slept in the open air, on the cold ground without a single bed. The hero admires the fact that the girl, despite everything, has never complained and remains steadfast. He asks her not to hold grudges or discontent. There is no one around, so let her express all her feelings, and pour out to him everything she has accumulated in her soul. However, Marie admits that she is really having fun. Rhonda asks in surprise how anyone can stay cheerful if no one knows when they will be able to get out of the forest. The girl is embarrassed and wants to admit that she is blushing precisely because she is next to him. But she quickly changes her answer, laughs awkwardly, and says that she's never actually encountered anything like that. It's something completely new to her. The hero also laughs awkwardly and admits that Marie is truly strong. He tells her that if anything happens, she should tell him everything right away, because she shouldn't worry. The girl sincerely thanks him for his concern. Later, Marie is still shivering from the cold, and Rondé, noticing this, throws his jacket over her shoulders. The girl blushed and thanked him, and thought to herself that it was warm, as if the hero himself was conveying his concern to her. Looking around, the boy assures that there are no monsters nearby. Marie gently tugs on the boy's sleeve and calls out to him, so the hero, looking around in surprise, looks at her. For a moment they freeze, their eyes meeting, but Ron turns away and says it's time for bed. He himself will stand guard outside for a while. The slightly offended girl still obeys him. Outwardly, the sad person also tries to convince himself that he did the right thing. Looking up at the sky, he notices the stars beginning to blur before his eyes. It had been several weeks since Ron and Marie had been wandering through the woods. They finally decided to take a break and enjoy some roasted meat. The hero is happy about this, and the girl says with a smile that she has heard that the meat of a deadly bear is very tasty, and now she has seen it for herself. He sincerely thanks the lady for her skill in controlling fire magic. The guy remarks that he is impressed by the fact that Marie possesses 2 types of magic at once. She replies that in fact her knowledge of fire magic is the simplest, only at a basic level. Ron says that thanks to this skill, they can enjoy roasted meat. Continuing their journey, the hero worries whether they will be able to get out of the forest, because Marie is already on the verge of exhaustion, and they need to find a way out as quickly as possible. A boy and a girl notice a bear, a healthy-looking beast, and it begins to quickly and menacingly approach the couple. Ron is about to use magic and asks Marie to step back a bit. The boy, who has already eaten enough bear meat, throws a poison bullet with a dangerous poison at the beast. The fire bear's condition is already at the limit, but the hero suddenly asks the girl if, in addition to the monster's roar, she happened to hear any voices. They look around, listening intently for any sounds. Marie replies that she still hears voices but can't make out what they're talking about. She advises the boy to check, and Ron warns him to be careful, because it is unknown whether the strangers are friendly. The girl points up and says that she can hear voices from up there. The hero fears that it could again be a mercenary similar to Albrecht. Marie is overjoyed because this is their first meeting with other people in a few weeks, and she doesn't want to miss this opportunity. Ron notices that the girl is terribly tired and decides it's worth taking a chance and trying to talk to her. He agrees to this offer and climbs to the very top. The guy asks Maria to hide and wait while he checks if the surroundings are safe. He notices a huge monster heading straight for some girl. Ron assesses whether to trust the stranger, then casts a spell to support her. At the same time, he is well aware that if he throws a poison bullet from here, the poison could spread and affect the girl. But it's too far away for direct contact. The beast has almost reached the girl, and the hero realizes that he won't have time to save her otherwise. He will have to take a risk and release a poisonous bullet. Suddenly, Marie appears in front of them and attacks with a magical ball of wind. Ron looks at her in surprise, and at this time the monster rushes straight at them. The girl tells Ron to go on his own. He throws a poison bullet with a dangerous poison directly into the animal. The armored bear has completely run out of health. Rhonda and Marie rush to the victim, asking if she was okay and reassuring her that she shouldn't be afraid. The stranger, trembling with fear, makes sure that this is really true, while the heroes pay attention to her long, pointed ears. It appears before them again and thanks them for their help. The elf introduced herself to Kutanar, Aga, Saisalfon, and Disaria, and once again sincerely thanked them for saving her in a difficult moment. Ron can't pronounce her name, so he asks to be called Cute. Noticing her pointed ears, the hero wonders if she is an elf, to which the girl nods with a smile and confirms, yes, an elf. Marie is happy and sees that it is a real honor to meet an elf in the forest. To this, Cut awkwardly replies that she's embarrassed to hear such words and asks if they really consider themselves human. Ron responds warmly to her words, introduces himself, and thinks to himself that he still doesn't understand who she really is. He decides not to reveal her real name, Marie, for now. He casually introduces everyone to Marie, and she blushes, embarrassedly noting that she and her friend were supposedly travelers, but fell into some kind of trap and ended up in this forest. The elf asks the girl in surprise why her cheeks are suddenly red, while Ron worries if Mary is okay, and wonders if she has caught a fever. The girl replies that she is fine, but she cannot calm down in her thoughts. The hero suddenly addressed her by name, without the usual polite formalities. Usually he is always reserved and polite, but now he spoke so simply, as if there was something more between them than just acquaintance, as if they were in love. Marie thinks about Cut, although she herself does not understand why she said it. The girl quickly changes the topic and starts talking about elf ears. Ron said that he knows about the existence of elves, although it is a real rarity to meet them. His companion adds that even the most influential officials of the kingdom have no idea where the elves live. Kut replies that her people rarely leave their native elven lands. The guy asks why the monster attacked her. The elf hesitates a bit and asks if she wants to share her story. To this, the girl replies that the elves are currently hunting in the village near the World Tree. Marie explains that elves are known as the hunters of the World Tree. Cut nods in response and adds, yes, because among elves, they believe that true maturity can only be achieved when you learn to hunt on your own. Kuta adds that she herself has never hunted lone wolves, and children younger than her are already considered world-class hunters. Because of this, the younger ones make fun of her, and the adults give her cold, judgmental looks. Ron says he understands her feelings because he himself has always been the loser in his family, and Maria is trying to outdo him. The elf calms the girl down and says that she still dreams of becoming a World Tree hunter as soon as possible. So she decided not to return to the village until she learned to hunt on her own. But as soon as she stepped outside the protective barrier, she immediately became the victim of an attack. So now she considers herself a failure. Marie denies her words and notes that Kutai's courage is truly admirable. The elf thanks the girl and asks if she can give them something as a token of gratitude. Marie turned to Ron and asked if it was true that the elves were the true masters of the forest. Ron nodded and confirmed it. They ask Kuta to teach them how to get out of the forest. She replies that if that's all they need, then she can take them there. Ron assures that traveling through the forest accompanied by an elf is the best way to find your way. Kutai says that the hero can ask anything he wants about the forest, and the boy sincerely thanks her for this opportunity. He pointed in that direction, saying that was where he wanted to go. However, the elf warned him that if he went in that direction, he might get lost in the depths of the forest. Marie notices that they have become closer to each other and, a little offended, says that something is wrong here. Cute deftly jumps from branch to branch, expertly clinging to the vines. When she lands directly on the cap of a giant mushroom, she cheerfully calls Rhonda and Marie to follow her. The hero, trying to stop the elf, notices that she is running too fast and worries that Marie might be exhausted. The woman, barely catching her breath, smiles and assures him that she will keep up the pace and not fall behind them. Once on the ground after jumping from the mushroom, Kuta suggests taking a break. Tired, Rhonda worries about how much longer they have to wander through this forest before they can find a way out. The elf replies that at the speed her companions are going, they will be able to get out of here in a few days. The young man is happy about this news and thanks her for her help. The hero suddenly realizes that he has already wandered into the very depths of the forest. He hands Marie a piece of fruit and says they were lucky to meet Kutai. The elf asks the girl in surprise if she is tired, to which she replies with a smile. Rest a little and everything will be fine. Ron notes that humans are not used to walking in the forest, unlike elves, and after his words, Kuta suggests taking a short break. She reaches forward and addresses the spirits. Something that looks like a seed appears on her palm. Marie doesn't understand what spirits the elf is calling upon, and at that very moment a seed falls from Kut's palm to the ground. A small magical creature with wings emerges from the seed. It turns out to be the spirit of the land. Rag Titan and Kut turn to the creature for help. Using earth magic, the elf puts a little of his power into the trees, and the branches immediately stretch out, intertwine with each other, and form a cozy hammock. Marie and Ron admire what Kut has done and sincerely praise her work. The boy wonders if magic helped here. The elf explains that she simply turned to the spirits for help. The hero is surprised, because he does not see spirits at all and concludes that only elves can notice them. Marie enthusiastically admits that this is the first time in her life she has seen spirit art. The hero wonders if other elves can do the same thing as Kuta. The elf replies that yes they can, and even much better than her. Ron remembers how everyone admired Felix and praised him for his incredible magical abilities before his eyes. He asks Kuta if she wants to fight the forest monsters and win. The elf confidently declares that she dreams of defeating an armored bear that even the entire village cannot handle, and solemnly bringing its head as a trophy. The partners awkwardly exchange glances, and Rhonda admits that her words really sounded cruel, but she still dreams of becoming stronger. The hero announces that starting tomorrow they will no longer run away from the monsters, but will start fighting them off. Kut happily agrees and calls him a teacher, which greatly surprises Marie, who definitely did not expect this. Later, Rond asks the elf what kind of magic she possesses, noticing her uncertainty. He explains that the main thing in magic is not just having power, but knowing how to use it correctly. Marie adds, "If you know well what your partner is capable of, together you can come up with a truly incredible idea." He thinks about it and demonstrates the technique for the first time when a piece of earth falls to the ground. However, suddenly she lifts him up, and at that very moment a height appears. Rond was surprised to find that she was able to control the earth to some extent. Then Kutu demonstrates his magic. A long, sharp stone suddenly grows from the ground, ready to attack. Marie notes that the elf has excellent earth magic, and the hero agrees. She adds that the earth spear looks interesting, but appears too slowly, making it very easy to dodge. Cute continues to amaze everyone with his magic. He throws fragments of stones at the earth spear, and it shatters into pieces. Marie notes that this land with stones looks very powerful. But although the attack is fast, it takes more time to prepare such a blow than to create a spear. He adds that earth magic takes time to activate, which Cute agrees with. However, Ron thought of something and noticed that the elf was actually very strong. After some time, Cute encounters a bear in armor and challenges it to a fight. But before he can finish, the animal roars loudly and begins to grow before his eyes. He rushes after the girl, and she, without losing her cool, uses magic to throw pieces of stone directly into the bear's face. Cute turns to the spirit for help, and the animal is immediately surrounded by plants that begin to sprout right through the armor. These plants become stronger and grow sharp thorns that injure the bear. However, the enemy does not give up. He pulls the plants out of the ground and heads straight for the elf. Suddenly, Kutai takes the earth from under the animal's paws, and it unexpectedly falls into the holes he created. When the bear landed, sharp stone spears suddenly burst from the pit and pierced its body through and through. Cute is glad that she has managed to deal with him, and Rond and Marie emerge from the bushes, enthusiastically praising the girl. The hero claims that he personally witnessed it. She single-handedly defeated a fierce bear in armor. Yads learns that from now on, Kutek can become a hunter for the world tree. The girl smiles at him and laughs softly. Having taken the bear meat, the heroes continued on their journey. Ron remembers Kut talking about the Ermine Forest, and that's what the elves call the forest they're in now. Marie assured me that if this was truly the Nar Forest, it would be virtually impossible to get lost on the way to the exit. If you make the wrong choice, you could end up in the Marquisate of Edward. The hero is a little surprised by this and asks Kute if the elves from her village know more about the human lands than she does. To this, the elf replies that she knows only one way to the humans. But there are those among the elves who know much better. Rom understood that the path Kate had told him about did not promise safety at all. Therefore, he sought to learn more in the elf village. Marie pointed out that their elf was not like the others, because she had heard that elves usually did not trust people at all. If someone approached their village, they might even attack them. The boy agreed with this. However, Kata suggests that if only Ron goes, then maybe everything will be okay. On the way to the elves, the hero turns to the elf and asks if Mary will be okay. However, Kutariashir notes that an earthen fortress created with the help of spirits is extremely strong. Ron agrees with him and adds that his partner's magic is best suited for protection and support. The elf admitted that learning these skills was very useful, and now she hopes that the villagers will finally recognize her. They approach the edge of the peak, and she notices that villages can be seen from here. But suddenly the girl is frightened by what she sees. She sees that the village is completely destroyed. Everything around is burned and in ruins. It sped through the village, and suddenly a black house emerged from among the other houses. Rond was also stunned by what he saw and thought it was an attack by monsters. Kuchi replies that this is most likely the work of a bear demon, as this evil spirit was recently seen in the forest. She explains that because of this demonic bear, the forest bears have become even more ferocious, and even the elves can barely cope with them. But suddenly someone shouts loudly and asks what she is doing there. One of the elves remarked angrily that she had just left the village and had already brought her husband with her at such a difficult moment. The elves try to drive Rondo away and strictly forbid him from appearing on their territory. However, Koot stops them, explaining that the hero saved her life. She shows the head of the armored bear and adds that she was able to get this trophy thanks to Ron's advice. An elf notices the animal's head and accuses another elf of deception, saying that even though she is the elder's daughter, she still brought a stranger to their tribe. The hero could not believe that Kate was the elder's daughter, and at that moment her father, a giant elf, appeared behind him. He inquires of Rhonda whether he had any contact with his daughter, warning that he would become ill otherwise. The scared boy quickly refutes it. He turns to the elder and confesses that he has a lover. The head elf hugs his daughter, admits that he missed her very much, and sadly apologizes for leaving without even notifying her. Her father asks how she is doing, and the elf replies that she is fine, but she is worried about the fate of the village. He returns to Rhonda and says that he calmed down when he found out he had a girlfriend. The elder introduces himself as Ul and asks to be addressed as such. He says that the village was recently attacked by monsters, so the appearance of any stranger immediately arouses everyone's suspicion. The man suggests moving to a house on the outskirts of the village and adds, if Rhonda has a friend she wants to invite, let her come with him. There he will listen carefully to their story. After listening to everything to the end, the elf confidently declares he knows very well where they should go, and where it is better not to stumble. He adds that the kingdom is divided, and if they go to the wrong place, they could cause trouble on the way back. The elder offers the following deal. He will guide them safely out of the forest if they help the elves defeat the demonic bear. Besides, if the monster bears are becoming more aggressive, it means they are being incited by a demonic bear. And as guardians of the forest, they cannot ignore this trouble. He returns to Rhonda and explains that his magic isn't actually real magic. Marie is surprised that the elves turn to a human for help, but the elder replies they would not have turned to an ordinary person. He adds that usually, as soon as Koot brought someone in, that person was immediately killed, and wonders if Marie knows why it was different this time. The man notices the spirit on Rhonda's head and says she's under their protection. The hero doesn't understand him, so the elder explains. Since ancient times, those who possess unusual, non-magical magic have been highly respected by the spirits. And for the elves, such people are special. Seeing spirits gathering around the boy, the villagers realize that he was actually a good person. Ron asks Kutut if she has seen ghosts in his house too. Marie explains that this is why she was sure that everything would be okay with Ron. The elf apologizes to her for leaving her alone. The woman advises this boy to accept Ul's offer and fight the monsters together, but the hero denies that it is too risky and decides to go alone. The girl admits that she is tired of waiting alone, and now she also wants to go with him. Ron warns her that no one knows what other monsters might come their way, and Marie recalls how they recently fought the bee warriors. She explains that poison magic is weak against large numbers of enemies, so her wind magic will come in handy here. The girl turns to the elder and wonders how the monster hunt will go. Ul replies that for the sake of protecting the village and hunting, the elves divide into groups of 3 or 4, hunters and defenders. He suggests that Ron and Marie join the hunters. He adds that it won't be easy to find a common language with the elves right away, so he suggests that Marie take the team under the status of a free detachment, and she agrees. The elder says that Zilla's team will be setting off in a second group soon, so this is a great opportunity to join them and ask Zilla about the monsters along the way. Rond and Marie encounters a party of elves, including 3 hunters. One of them reacts angrily to the fact that humans will be traveling with them. He informs the pair that the naked monsters have become incredibly strong and warns them to be careful. The elf is about to leave and asks Ron which way he's going. To this, the hero offers to go with them. He wants to see with his own eyes how the elves fight monsters. Zill is indifferent to the boy and tells him to do as he sees fit. Cut is clearly unhappy with the elf's indifference, and Ron sighs with relief. At least they've been told something. The hero is surprised that the owl sent his own daughter to the hunting party, and the elf explains in response, her father does not put family above others. However, Cut suggests that, most likely, her father is terribly worried right now, and this is all just in his imagination. Marie suggests dealing with the monsters as soon as possible so the owl can calm down, and Ran agrees. Suddenly, his comrades allow Roar to act, and Elf notices that Zill and his team have already encountered monsters. 3 bears in heavy armor are walking towards the elves. Ronde looks at the giant monsters with anxiety and asks Kutai if they will help them. The girl calmly replies that the hunters are quite capable of dealing with such creatures. One of the elves calls upon a spirit for help and directs a powerful whirlwind directly at the enemies. Thus, this element cuts off one of the bear's paws. Rory is amazed. The gust of wind turned out to be much stronger than the one she could have created herself. Then another elf attacks the monster, this time using spirit power and water magic. Her spell hits the beast right in the eye and pierces it through. She then controls water and creates a water bubble around the enemy's head, causing them to suffocate. Zill is already preparing to attack the last bear. He tells the man to watch over the elf battle while he prepares to use fire magic. A powerful jet of flame lifted the bear into the air and engulfed it in flames. The monster fell to the ground, burned to the ground, and Zill, smiling, looked at Rhonda. Kuta enthusiastically praises the elf, and Marie adds, "It's not for nothing that Zilla is considered a true genius of spiritual magic among the elves." The elf declares that humans are beyond his power and strictly demands that they leave their forest immediately. Ron thinks, this is how elven warriors fight, relying on their spiritual magic. Their destructive power is simply incredible on a completely different level. He thinks that if a demonic bear can overcome such strong elves, then its power is truly frightening.